Some music legends rise so fast and hit so hard that people struggle to explain what they're hearing. The skill feels complete from the start. The control feels unnatural. The impact feels heavy. When that happens, stories start forming around the talent instead of the work behind it. For decades, the same idea keeps coming back. That success at this level demands a price. That nobody reaches this far without giving something up. These stories follow the same names again and again, pass through interviews, rumors, documentaries, and fan conversations. This video looks at how those stories formed and why they stuck. It follows artists whose talent felt overwhelming, whose rise confused people, and whose lives carried visible strain. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix's early life unfolded under unstable conditions. He grew up in Seattle in a family environment shaped by financial pressure and frequent disruption. Housing changed often. Supervision was inconsistent. Emotional safety was limited. People who knew him as a child remembered long periods where he stayed withdrawn and quiet. Hendrix spent much of his time alone. He avoided large social groups. He didn't express himself easily through conversation. Music became the space where he focused his attention. When he received his first guitar, it quickly turned into an obsession. He carried it everywhere. He practiced daily. He played at night. He played when others slept. His learning process stayed informal. He listened closely to records and repeated what he heard. He slowed passages down. He replayed them until they stayed in his hands. This pattern repeated for years. He didn't seek praise. He didn't chase crowds. He worked privately. During his teenage years, Hendrix drifted through jobs and temporary living situations. He joined the military briefly, then left. After that, music became his only direction. He played in small clubs. He backed other artists. He followed instructions. His name stayed off posters. These years mattered because they shaped his discipline. Hendrix learned how to adapt to different styles. He learned how to play quietly and loudly. He learned how to follow rhythm sections and support lead performers. This training happened without recognition. By the early 1960s, Hendrix had logged thousands of hours performing in obscurity. Audiences rarely noticed him. Managers rarely promoted him. He remained in the background. This continued for years. The shift came quickly after he traveled to London in 1966. Within weeks, he began performing in front of musicians who already held status in the British music scene. Their reaction spread fast. They talked. They brought friends. Attendance grew. By 1967, Hendrix was performing at major festivals and releasing albums that sold rapidly. Media coverage expanded. Crowds multiplied. This change unfolded within a single year. To outside observers, it looked sudden. That speed caused confusion. Many people did not see the years of preparation. They saw the arrival without the process. This gap created space for speculation. People asked how someone unknown could reach that level so fast. The Monterey Pop Festival intensified that reaction. Hendrix closed his set by setting his guitar on fire. He poured lighter fluid on the instrument, knelt, and ignited it. He stayed silent during the act. The audience reacted strongly. Cameras captured the moment. That image circulated widely. Newspapers printed it. Magazines featured it. Posters reproduced it. The act became one of the most recognizable moments in music history. Hendrix did not explain the gesture afterward. He did not contextualize it. This silence allowed interpretation to grow. Some people viewed it as theater. Others saw ritual meaning. Over time, those interpretations became detached from the original performance. Hendrix's interviews added fuel. He spoke about music arriving through him. He described moments where sound appeared suddenly. These descriptions reflected personal experience rather than technical explanation. Still, they were quoted repeatedly without context. Music journalism at the time leaned toward mysticism when describing black artists with overwhelming talent. Hendrix was often framed as possessed or supernatural. Reviews emphasized sensation rather than technique. This framing reflected broader cultural bias. Hendrix did not challenge these narratives. He did not clarify. He continued performing. Silence allowed myth to expand. In 1970, Hendrix died at age 27. His death came abruptly. There was no long public decline. The story stopped mid-motion. That ending froze the narrative. Rise, spectacle, silence. With no extended explanation, the legend solidified. People filled gaps with speculation because the timeline felt incomplete. This unresolved structure carried into cultural memory. Hendrix became associated with ideas of cost, exchange, and sacrifice. Those ideas persisted because they offered explanation where understanding felt insufficient. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin grew up inside church-centered life from early childhood. Her father was a minister. Gospel music surrounded her. Visiting singers came through regularly. Church services lasted for hours. Singing required discipline and attention. Aretha learned structure early. Gospel training emphasized timing, breath control, and restraint. Emotion existed within boundaries. Notes had to be placed carefully. Power came from control rather than volume. She began performing publicly at a young age. Audiences noticed her immediately. Her voice carried weight. Listeners reacted strongly. Some described a sense of stillness. Others said, the room changed atmosphere. These reactions repeated across venues. People struggled to explain why her sound produced such physical responses. She stood still while singing. Her body remained relaxed. The sound remained steady. When Aretha transitioned into secular music, the move raised concerns in church communities. Gospel voices traditionally remained within religious space. Crossing into mainstream music challenged long-held expectations. Suspicion followed her early career. Some listeners questioned how a church-trained voice would function outside that setting. That suspicion existed alongside admiration. Aretha's early recording career progressed slowly. Several albums received limited attention. She continued working, but chart dominance did not arrive immediately. Then her career surged after working with producers who understood her strengths. The shift appeared sudden to the public. Performances gained widespread attention. Her recordings dominated radio. Her stage presence remained controlled. She did not rely on movement. Audiences often described physical responses. Silence spread. Applause paused. People focused fully on her voice. Aretha avoided discussing technique publicly. She did not explain how she achieved control. She did not encourage rumors. She wore a cross necklace consistently. She prayed before performances. These practices stayed personal. Her refusal to engage with speculation allowed stories to circulate freely. Cultural discomfort contributed. A black woman commanding both religious and secular authority challenged social norms. Some people struggled to accept that level of command without external explanation. Rumors filled that gap. They framed her power as borrowed rather than developed. Those stories persisted because they resolved discomfort. Aretha's career extended for decades. Her control remained consistent. Her presence stayed dominant. The rumors never disappeared because performances continued reinforcing the same reactions. Listeners returned to the same explanations when faced with the same effect. Silence, stillness, weight. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye grew up in a household where religion shaped behavior through fear and authority. His father was a strict preacher who believed discipline mattered more than comfort. Rules were enforced harshly. Punishment was common. Scripture was used to justify control. Marvin learned early that faith meant obedience, and that disobedience carried consequences. Music entered his life through church. Singing offered structure and approval. At the same time, it placed him directly under his father's authority. His voice drew praise from congregations, but that praise never softened life at home. Marvin learned to associate music with tension. Singing brought attention, and attention brought pressure. As Marvin got older, that pressure stayed with him. He internalized fear of judgment. He worried about doing the wrong thing. He worried about divine punishment. These worries shaped his personality. People close to him described him as sensitive and conflicted even before fame arrived. When Marvin entered the music industry, he carried those internal conflicts with him. At Motown, his image was carefully managed. He was presented as polished, gentle, and romantic. His recordings followed strict guidelines. Lyrics avoided controversy. Output stayed controlled. This phase of his career brought success. Songs charted well. Audiences responded positively. From the outside, Marvin appeared calm and compliant. Internally, tension built. He felt disconnected from what he was producing. He described feeling like a performer playing a role rather than an artist expressing himself. The Motown structure provided safety. It also limited expression. Marvin followed instructions for years. Over time, frustration grew. He wanted to address subjects that mattered to him. He wanted to reflect what he saw in the world around him. That desire led to a turning point with the album What's Going On. Marvin pushed against Motown's control and released music that addressed war, poverty, and social strain. This shift shocked the industry. Executives worried about audience reaction. They worried about sales. The album challenged expectations. Marvin's voice changed tone. It sounded intimate and urgent. Listeners described it as personal and heavy. The songs felt inward. Many people said it sounded like someone speaking directly to the listener. This shift marked a break between Marvin and the structures that shaped his early career. He gained creative freedom. He also lost protection. With that freedom came exposure. His internal struggles surfaced more clearly. Around this time, stories began circulating about Marvin hearing voices or feeling guided by internal sound. These accounts were never verified. They came from interviews, associates, and later retellings. Marvin himself spoke about feeling overwhelmed by thoughts and emotions. He described music arriving suddenly and intensely. These statements fed speculation. Some people interpreted them as spiritual guidance. Others viewed them as signs of distress. Marvin did not clarify. He spoke openly about feeling torn between faith and fear. He worried about judgment. He worried about punishment. As his career progressed, isolation increased. Marvin spent more time alone. Backstage behavior changed. He withdrew from group settings. He avoided conversations. He appeared anxious before performances. People noticed that he paced frequently. He prayed alone. He struggled to maintain focus. Drug use entered the picture during this period. It did not erase fear. It intensified it. His mood shifted unpredictably. Marvin's relationships suffered. Trust weakened. He distanced himself from collaborators. He spoke less in interviews. He avoided questions about his personal life. The voice that once carried warmth now carried strain. Financial issues added pressure. Legal problems followed. Marvin moved frequently. He stayed disconnected from stable environments. Each move increased isolation. In the final years of his life, Marvin returned to his parents' home. This decision carried weight. The same authority figure from his childhood now shared space with him again. Tension escalated quickly. Arguments became frequent. Disagreements turned hostile. Marvin expressed fear openly. He told people he felt unsafe. He believed judgment surrounded him. On April 1st, 1984, an argument between Marvin and his father ended in violence. Marvin was shot and killed by his father. The symbolism struck people immediately. A man raised under strict religious authority died at the hands of that authority. Public reaction focused on tragedy and shock. The details carried emotional weight. Fans struggled to reconcile the gentleness of his voice with the violence of his death. Marvin's story remained unresolved in public memory. His music sounded confessional. His life felt tormented. His death closed the loop many people had sensed through his work. Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder's story begins with something people struggled to understand from the start. He was blind from infancy, yet his awareness of sound appeared unusually precise. From a very young age, he responded to music with accuracy that surprised adults. Family members noticed that he reacted to pitch, rhythm, and harmony before he could read or write. Doctors and educators did not expect advanced musical ability from a child with his condition. At the time, disability often came with low expectations. Stevie challenged those assumptions early. He could identify melodies after brief exposure. He reacted emotionally to chord changes. He showed sensitivity to sound that went beyond basic recognition. As a child, Stevie gravitated toward instruments naturally. He explored pianos, drums, and harmonicas without formal instruction at first. He learned by listening closely and repeating what he heard. His sense of timing developed early. Adults around him noticed that he could keep rhythm without guidance. That precision stood out. By the time Stevie was signed to Motown as a child, his abilities were already advanced. He performed confidently in front of adults. He stayed focused during rehearsals. He absorbed feedback quickly. Musicians who worked with him noticed how easily he adjusted. Stories about his abilities spread quickly. Some came from genuine surprise. Others came from misunderstanding. People expected limits. Stevie kept exceeding them. As he grew older, stories circulated about his ability to replicate music after hearing it once. Musicians claimed he could listen to a song and then play it back immediately. These accounts varied in detail, but the theme stayed consistent. He processed sound quickly and accurately. In studio environments, these abilities became more visible. Veteran musicians described sessions where Stevie listened quietly, then suggested changes that improved arrangements. He identified mistakes others missed. He corrected timing issues. He suggested harmonies that fit perfectly. These anecdotes carried weight because they came from experienced professionals. They spoke openly about being surprised. Some admitted they had never worked with anyone who heard music the way Stevie did. Over time, casual remarks turned into stories. Stories turned into exaggeration. Exaggeration turned into legend. People repeated accounts without context. Listening once became listening for seconds. Replication became perfection every time. These stories spread outside professional circles. Fans repeated them. Journalists amplified them. Each retelling added weight. The idea formed that Stevie possessed abilities beyond normal explanation. Rumors followed. Some framed his talent as supernatural. Others described him as having heightened senses that replaced sight. These explanations simplified complex skill into mystery. Stevie did not encourage these narratives. In interviews, he spoke about practice and discipline. He talked about long hours in studios. He described learning theory. He credited mentors and repetition. He did not dramatize his process. He did not claim special powers. He stayed consistent in how he described his work. Music came from focus and effort. Despite this, the stories persisted. Many people struggled to accept simple explanations. The idea that talent could develop through practice felt unsatisfying to some. The combination of blindness and mastery created discomfort. People searched for reasons that felt proportional to the result. Extreme ability demanded extreme explanation in their minds. Hard work felt too ordinary. Media coverage contributed to this. Headlines leaned into mystery. Interviews highlighted anecdotes without grounding. The legend grew independently of Stevie's own words. Stevie continued working without addressing rumors directly. He focused on creating music. He experimented with sound. He pushed boundaries through technology and composition. His output reinforced perceptions of genius. As his career expanded, so did the myth. Each new achievement fed the same story. Each innovation added to disbelief. The idea that he simply worked harder remained less appealing than mystery. Stevie's blindness stayed central to these narratives. People fixated on it. They treated it as the source of his abilities rather than one aspect of his life. This framing ignored training and experience. He responded by staying grounded. He credited collaborators. He emphasized learning. He avoided mystification. That restraint allowed speculation to continue unchecked. Over decades, the story settled into culture. Stevie Wonder became associated with heightened perception. The label stuck because it answered questions people didn't want to examine closely. The persistence of this story reveals more about audience psychology than about Stevie himself. People resist explanations that feel ordinary when outcomes appear extraordinary. Stevie's case shows how silence can create suspicion. By refusing to correct exaggeration aggressively, he allowed the narrative to exist alongside reality. This pattern repeats across music history. When skill defies expectation, rumor fills the gap. When explanation feels insufficient, myth takes its place. Ray Charles. Ray Charles lost his sight at a young age, and that loss shaped every part of his early life. By the time he was 7, he was completely blind. His childhood in the American South carried poverty, instability, and constant adjustment. Losing vision added another layer of difficulty. He had to relearn how to move, how to orient himself, and how to rely on sound for information most people gathered through sight. Music entered his life early. It became practical before it became expressive. Sound helped him understand space. Rhythm helped him move. Melody helped him remember. Ray learned to identify people by footsteps and tone of voice. He learned to recognize rooms by echo and distance. This sensitivity developed out of necessity, not mysticism. As a child, Ray attended a school for the blind where music education played a central role. He learned classical piano, theory, and discipline. Practice routines were strict. Repetition mattered. Accuracy mattered. Ray absorbed these lessons fully. He spent hours at the piano. He worked through exercises repeatedly. Teachers noticed his focus and persistence. Life outside school remained hard. Money stayed limited. Support was inconsistent. Music became the area where Ray felt control. It offered structure in a life filled with uncertainty. That control stayed important later when he entered professional spaces that carried their own pressures. Ray's early musical environment was rooted in gospel. Church music surrounded him. He played and sang in religious settings. Gospel provided rhythm, emotion, and community. At the same time, blues and jazz were present in everyday life around him. Ray listened closely to everything. As he matured, Ray began blending these influences. He took gospel structures and applied them to secular themes. He brought church rhythm into blues and jazz. This fusion broke boundaries that many people considered fixed. For church communities, this shift carried meaning. Sacred sounds were expected to remain in religious space. Ray's music crossed that line. His approach drew criticism from religious leaders. Some accused him of misusing spiritual elements. Audiences responded strongly. People described emotional reactions that felt intense and personal. Some reported feeling uplifted, others described feeling overwhelmed. Concertgoers talked about atmosphere rather than technique. These reactions fed a sense that Ray's music carried spiritual weight. Listeners struggled to describe the experience in technical terms. They turned to spiritual language because it felt familiar. Journalists repeated those descriptions. Reviews mentioned church, spirit, and possession. Over time, these terms detached from metaphor and became literal in retellings. The idea that Ray's music carried something beyond skill took hold. Ray contributed unintentionally through the way he spoke. In interviews, he sometimes used prayer language to describe focus and preparation. He talked about listening deeply. He mentioned feeling connected to music in ways that felt personal. These statements were later quoted without context. Metaphors became claims. Personal language became evidence. Ray did not correct these interpretations aggressively. Behind the scenes, Ray described his process clearly to those who asked. He practiced constantly. He listened closely. He learned arrangements thoroughly. He memorized parts with precision. His blindness required this level of preparation. He relied on hearing more than most musicians because he had to. That reliance sharpened skill through repetition. It did not arrive instantly. It developed over years. Ray explained that he listened harder because he needed to. He paid attention to detail because mistakes carried greater cost. He practiced longer because memory mattered. These explanations appeared in interviews, but they received less attention than myth. As Ray's career grew, the legend expanded. Each performance reinforced the idea of extraordinary ability. Audiences continued describing emotional impact in spiritual terms. That language stayed appealing. Cultural context mattered. Black musicians with strong emotional impact were often framed through mystical language rather than craft. This pattern shaped how Ray was discussed publicly. Over time, people preferred myth over method. Method required acknowledging effort, discipline, and training. Myth offered a shortcut explanation. It matched the emotional response without requiring understanding of technique. Ray did not build his image around mystery. He spoke openly about work. He discussed influence. He credited gospel, blues, and jazz traditions. Still, the legend continued independently. As decades passed, retellings grew more dramatic. Stories emphasized darkness, loss, and spiritual hearing. Each repetition moved further from the practical reality of his life. Ray's blindness became central to the myth. It was framed as the source of his ability rather than one factor among many. This framing simplified complexity into symbolism. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston entered the music industry carrying a voice that stopped people mid-conversation. When she first auditioned for industry executives, the reaction was immediate and intense. People in the room described freezing in place. Some stopped taking notes. Others looked at each other in disbelief. This wasn't a slow appreciation that built over time. It hit instantly. Producers and executives talked about clarity, control, and range. They focused on how clean the sound was. Notes landed exactly where expected. Breath control stayed steady. Pitch did not drift. This level of control from a young singer surprised experienced professionals. Many of them had worked with strong vocalists before. Whitney still stood out. Word spread quickly inside the industry. People wanted to hear her in person. Meetings turned into auditions. Auditions turned into deals. Whitney moved from discovery to signing without delay. That speed mattered. It shaped how people understood her arrival. Her debut performances reinforced the reaction. Television appearances showed the same control. Live vocals matched studio recordings. Audiences responded strongly. Applause started early. Standing ovations became common. Critics struggled to describe what they were hearing without leaning on exaggeration. As her first album released, sales confirmed what executives believed. Songs climbed charts rapidly. Radio stations increased rotation. Interviews followed. Appearances multiplied. Whitney's presence expanded everywhere at once. This rapid ascent created discomfort for some observers. Music careers often involve gradual growth. Whitney's path skipped many visible steps. She appeared fully formed. That appearance encouraged speculation. People searched for explanations that felt proportional to the result. Her voice sounded polished from the beginning. There was little sign of trial or adjustment. That consistency made it difficult for people to see development. They saw outcome without context. Offhand comments contributed to this perception. In interviews, Whitney sometimes spoke casually about singing coming naturally. She mentioned being surrounded by music growing up. She referred to singing in church. These remarks were ordinary in context. Later, those same comments were pulled out and reframed. Statements about natural ability were treated as admissions of something beyond training. Casual language became evidence for rumor. Whitney did not revisit these interpretations publicly. Media coverage amplified this shift. Tabloids focused on extremes. They described her voice using language that leaned toward the unreal. Headlines emphasized perfection. Articles repeated anecdotes without analysis. As pressure increased, coverage changed tone. Success stories turned into expectation narratives. Whitney became the standard. Every performance carried weight. Mistakes were anticipated rather than forgiven. This pressure affected her privately. Faith played a role. Whitney grew up in church environments where singing carried spiritual meaning. She believed her voice was a gift. That belief came with responsibility. Responsibility added weight. Loneliness increased as her career expanded. Touring schedules limited stable relationships. Trust became harder to maintain. People around her often had professional interests. Privacy decreased. Expectations stayed high. Whitney spoke about exhaustion later in her career. She described feeling overwhelmed. She talked about needing space. These admissions received less attention than headlines. As media focus intensified, personal struggles became public. Coverage shifted towards speculation. Her voice remained central to every discussion. Any change in sound became a topic. Comparison replaced appreciation. The legend around Whitney grew alongside scrutiny. Her early perfection became the reference point. Later struggles were measured against it. This contrast fed myth rather than understanding. After her death, the legend intensified. Sales surged. Media coverage returned to her early performances. The narrative looped back to her debut image. The beginning overshadowed the middle and the end. People revisited old interviews searching for clues. Casual remarks gained new meaning. Statements were reinterpreted through hindsight. The story became fixed. Whitney's death closed the timeline. With no future chapters, interpretation settled. Her voice stayed frozen in memory at its peak. This freezing effect strengthened myth. When development stops abruptly, explanation fills the space. Fans repeated the same questions. How did it arrive so complete? How did it fade? Why did it feel untouchable? Whitney did not build her image around mystery. She focused on performance. She followed direction. She delivered consistently. Mystery grew around her, without her involvement. The discomfort many people felt came from imbalance. The result felt larger than the explanation they were offered. Training and environment felt insufficient to some listeners. They looked elsewhere. That tendency shaped how her story is told today. The voice remains central. The person often recedes. The legend grows independent of lived reality. Prince. Prince entered music already aware of how image shapes belief. From the beginning, he controlled how people saw him. The purple clothing, the lighting, the symbols, and the stage setups were planned carefully. Nothing about his presentation happened by accident. Audiences did not only hear music, they entered an environment. The color purple became part of that environment early. It appeared in album art, clothing, and stage design. Fans began associating it with mood and authority. Purple suggested royalty, distance, and control. Prince never explained why he chose it. He allowed people to assign meaning themselves. On stage, Prince limited movement around him. Lighting focused tightly. Band members followed strict direction. Performances felt precise. Silence between songs carried weight. The atmosphere stayed intense. This presentation made people feel they were witnessing something closed off and deliberate. Outside the stage, Prince remained guarded. Interviews stayed short. Personal explanations were rare. When asked direct questions, he often redirected or ended conversations. This approach limited access. Limited access increases speculation. As his career developed, rumors followed him. In Minneapolis, where Prince built much of his early work, stories circulated about late-night sessions, private gatherings, and unusual creative routines. These stories were passed verbally. They lacked documentation. They gained detail with repetition. Some rumors used occult language. Symbols seen on stage were interpreted beyond design. Lyrics were dissected for hidden meaning. Album artwork was examined closely. Fans searched for patterns. Observers connected unrelated details. Prince did not deny these stories. He did not confirm them either. Silence remained his approach. That silence allowed rumors to grow independently. One statement added fuel. In an interview, Prince once said there was more beyond sound. The sentence was brief. He did not expand on it. He did not define what he meant. That single line was quoted repeatedly. People interpreted the sentence differently. Some viewed it as a comment on emotion. Others framed it as spiritual. Over time, it became evidence for larger claims. Context disappeared. The sentence stood alone. Prince continued working at a pace that impressed even veteran musicians. He wrote constantly. He recorded frequently. He mastered multiple instruments. Studio sessions stretched long. Output stayed consistent. Musicians who worked with him described his intuition. He heard arrangements quickly. He corrected mistakes immediately. He adjusted performances on the fly. These accounts reinforced perceptions of unusual ability. Prince did not respond by explaining technique. He did not describe practice routines publicly. He did not break down theory. He allowed outcomes to speak. This refusal to explain shaped his legacy. Fans filled gaps with interpretation. Critics leaned into mystery. Media coverage emphasized enigma. Prince's death in 2016 came suddenly. There was no prolonged public decline. News spread quickly. Fans gathered. Media revisited his catalog immediately. Stories resurfaced. With his death, silence became permanent. There were no future interviews, no clarifications, no revisions. Every rumor froze in place. Posthumous releases followed. Vault material emerged. Each release added to myth. Fans searched lyrics for clues. Studio notes were examined closely. The absence of explanation allowed the legend to expand. Prince became associated with secrecy and control. That association stayed because it had no ending. Stories about musicians selling something intangible for success have existed for decades. They appear across genres and eras. These stories persist because extreme talent unsettles people. When excellence exceeds expectation, discomfort follows. Audiences often struggle with unexplained outcomes. Skill developed through years of effort feels abstract. Training happens privately. Results appear suddenly. That gap invites narrative. Genius creates imbalance. It shifts power. It places one person far ahead of others. People search for reasons that restore balance. Supernatural explanations provide that balance. The idea of a price attached to success satisfies emotional need. It suggests that extreme reward requires extreme cost. This logic feels fair to many people. It explains disparity. In reality, the costs paid by these artists were visible and human. Isolation increased as fame grew. Pressure followed every performance. Privacy disappeared. Trust became difficult. Many artists struggled with addiction. Others dealt with mental health challenges. Some faced early death. These outcomes did not require supernatural cause. They followed patterns of stress and exposure. Still, people prefer symbolic explanations. They feel cleaner. They feel proportional. They reduce complexity into story. And that is why these stories never end.